everyone. Today we have the wonderful Joy Baglio. She's a literary fiction writer whose short fiction has appeared widely in such journals as Plowshares, the Missouri Review, Tin House, American Short Fiction, and many others. The list is long. Her work has been optioned for film and TV. She has been awarded numerous residencies and fellowships. Joy holds an MFA from the New School and is the founder of the literary arts organization Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop. She's currently at work on a collection of short stories, as well as 3 speculative literary novels and a screenplay. Wow, Joy, the list of work and accolades is unbelievable. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you so much, Jason. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Of course. So to start off, I want to ask you about your journey. I'm so curious about everybody's journey and how everybody's journey is so different. So could you tell us a little bit more about your path to becoming a writer? Were you a kid? Was it something that happened later in life?
So I'm one of those people who actually knew very young that I wanted to write. I don't think there was ever a time when I thought I wouldn't be a writer. I kind of knew I would do something creative, something with stories. And I wrote stories through childhood. In high school, I would come home from school, do homework, work on my novel. I had like a very bad science fiction novel, and a fantasy Tolkien style with like a whole map to go along with it that I was working on in high school.
That's awesome.
So that was my life then. And I did study writing in college. I was a English and a creative writing major. I took workshops throughout college. And then I went on for my MFA. So I kind of traditionally went like the whole study writing like as serious as you can route. But it wasn't really until after my MFA that I really started to discover what felt like the stories I wanted to tell, my voice, and even like some deep, real excitement for what I was doing as a writer. And I do credit places like Tin House, the summer workshop at Tin House, Kenyon Review's summer workshop, Breadloaf. Those are some of the places I went right after my MFA for like their summer, like week-long, 10-day long conference. And it was through that community and through those mentors that I found there, through that, what just felt like a very alive community of writers and study, that I really started to feel like I knew who I was as a writer.
Oh, I love that. So you went through the traditional route, but it was kind of experiencing it with real community, with real networks, where you kind of saw the spark really kind of stayed lit.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was that. I don't know if it was the timing in my own life that it was just like after all of this study, then something clicked on for me. I mean, it wasn't like I was a bad writer or like a not very interested writer. I was like very serious about writing throughout all of this, but there was just something that clicked for me at that point in my life. I was late 20s, early 30s, and it really started clicking. And clicking as in I kind of was working on things that I was actually really excited about, and it kind of showed in the work. The fact that I was approaching something differently, had a sense of what I wanted to do, that did come out in my work. And I do think it's something about those settings, the very short summer conference that puts a bunch of very kind of hungry people, like metaphorically hungry people, together to talk writing and art and study, and with some like really impressive, amazing authors leading it. And there's something about that like the crucible of that, like it's just for a short time. It's all these people that really worked for me, I think. And I still, to this day, I will apply for opportunities at those places if there's funding. And I really do get a lot out of that.
I love that. I love that. Especially like what I'm hearing is like you're kind of finding the fun in writing in those environments, and I see that as a trend in your writing, which I want to return to later in the conversation. For now, I want to shift over to something that kind of connects to the workshopping that you've done. So you seem to, I know that you're in the midst of other things like these longer works, but you seem to have kind of found your footing with short fiction. It seems to be like you're, at least earlier in your career, the primary focus. So could you talk about your love of short fiction, or if you do have a preference for it over long fiction, what is it about short fiction
Yeah.
that captures you?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was actually thinking about that on a application for something. I was like, what is it about short fiction that I just really um it's a lot of things. Well, I think a lot of us who go the MFA route and like who just study writing for a long time in workshops, obviously we're reading short fiction, we're workshopping short fiction, so there is kind of a comfort that develops with the short form. And for me, though, I mean, it really just comes down to I think it's easier to work on something that is like 15 pages versus like 400. It's just, I mean, it just seems obvious. It's easier to go through every part of the process, the revision process. It's easier to, I mean, the number of 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 kind of big questions or ideas that are at play in a short story is a lot smaller. It's you can hold it in your mind in a different way. So that's some of the craft reasons why I just kind of got I saw this as a like practical way to hone and develop my skills as a writer. And I tell it to students all the time. I think it's much easier to develop the skills and to gain confidence as a writer in short fiction, even flash fiction, even more. And I can talk about that too. I write a lot of flash, and I think that you learn so much about yourself as a writer, but and as an editor, and the ability to pare something down to its most essential components is like a massive skill, I think. And I'm actually struggling with the inverse of that in writing a novel. It's like I don't necessarily think all of these parts are as relevant, but I am kind of building out something. But in terms of the value I think short fiction has also, I mean, it clearly like in our world of like not much time, like it's obviously it's more, it's easy to be consumed by us. It's also, I think it can be a way that of experimentation with form and with voice and with different styles that you might not want to devote a whole novel to. You might not, as a reader or writer, you might not want to be in a whole second person novel or some experimental point of view novel for that many pages, but you know, you'll read a flash like that and you'll really get something out of it. And same as a writer, I love experimenting with voice, with point of view, with with a lot of things, a lot of elements. And I think, yeah, short fiction really allows for that. Yeah.
I love that. So on the topic of short story, now I'm going to ask you an impossible question right now. So I don't expect an actual answer, but it's just a way to talk about this. So the question is, what makes the perfect short story? Or the inverse of that.
Yeah.
How do you know when a short story is broken, when it's not working? What are these essential ingredients? Because it is different than long form. It's a whole different animal. So in your mind, like how do you know if if this is operating properly as a short story, or if it has something that's missing?
That is such a good question. I don't even think it has an answer, but I like
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well, I think, you know, the New Yorker, Deborah Treisman has this thing she says, or I don't know if it's her actually, but it's somewhere in the on the New Yorker's submission guidelines, which is that the story has to succeed according to its own terms.
Hmm.
And I think that is, I can't say anything better than that. Like, I think that any short story sets out its own terms or kind of creates a promise to the reader in the beginning of whatever you're reading. I mean, I guess a novel does too, but maybe there's a longer grace period where that promise is kind of announced. But in short fiction, there's a promise that is made. Like, what kind of story am I in? Like, if you're in a Kelly Link story, very early on, you're getting kind of language and clues that you're in a story where there's going to be something uncanny, where there might be supernatural elements, where there's kind of a macabre, like foreboding aspect. Oftentimes, like, she has other many types of stories, but so there's often some kind of indication of what story you're in, and I think a story that succeeds according to those terms, to kind of that follows through on its own promise. And a big thing, I think, and I've been thinking about this with a lot of editing work I've been doing recently, and which is a thing I think this can happen a lot of times in new writers, is that there can be a flinching away from being clear, talking about the thing you're really talking about, like going to the territory you announce that you're going to. And I can see in short stories that fall a little bit short, a hesitation sometimes to really go there, or a hesitation to really name the thing you're talking about. So I think that aspect of creating a promise, a clear promise to a reader in the opening, and following through into the ideas and the territory that you announce you are going toward, and not flinching away from that, even if it's a difficult topic, or sometimes it's not that it's a difficult topic. Sometimes it's just really hard to pull off. So there can also be kind of the kind of generalized, abstract way of kind of avoiding that. And I think the best short stories do kind of a high wire act, where they go into a territory that is really hard to pull off, and they land the plane, so to speak, and they create that effect all the way to the end.
Well, I think you're right in saying that that question I asked you was an unfair question that didn't have an answer, but I think that is a near perfect answer. I think you're right in you're putting your finger on something important, which is that in long form fiction there are so many things going on. There are so many concepts and themes and things happening, even plot wise,
Yeah.
where that promise that you're making, you have sometimes chapters to like set up that promise. With the short story, it's immediate, and I myself have been guilty of flinching away from um, following through sometimes, and I wonder sometimes if for new writers it's um, fear, or
Mm.
sometimes perhaps like this is less ideal, but maybe like an attempt to be clever, and so you
You know,
subvert the thing rather than lean into the thing.
I totally agree with you. I think it is an attempt to be clever. I think sometimes there's this sense and I see it in myself when I was the early stories that was writing, even through grad school, this sense that through mystery we are pulling, like through withholding maybe too much, we're pulling a reader in more, and then through vagueness and abstraction there's almost something more profound happening. And I think that's a form of a flinch that can happen, where the writer obviously knows what they're talking about. They're not thinking they're being maybe as cryptic as they are, and they're thinking that there is some profundity in this kind of withholding, in this kind of abstraction and talking around an idea. Yeah, it's interesting because you learn very quickly that people get confused by that, and if the reader is struggling to understand the basics of what happens, that there's not really any profundity in that. So.
Oh, I agree. I agree so much. I love that. Let's talk about Frogheart.
Oh,
So
sure.
Frog, so Frogheart appeared in Plowshares. Am I correct?
Yes.
And uh, talk about setting up a promise. That story right away feels like it's straight out of Hans Christian Andersen. It's like this fairy tale esque opening, and then it continues in that vein. I mean, of course, it's more modern, it's more realistic, and all of that. But I do see that through line of the fairy tale all the way through. Can you talk about either the fairy tale component of that, or your inspiration for that story?
Yeah. Well, actually, the inspiration for the story it's very strange. It was actually just this little figurine of a frog that is on my nightstand. And in the middle of one night when I couldn't sleep, I was looking at it, and it just kind of, some of the first lines of that story just came into my head, and I just jotted them down. So that shows that inspiration can really, come from the most random things around us. But yeah, I am really inspired by fairy tales, and I draw a lot from the structures, the kind of repetitive structures of fairy tales. I think that it can be a really interesting and helpful thing for writers to reuse these certain sort of age old elements that are in a lot of stories, like the idea of an animal coming to the aid of humans, the idea of getting like making like a life-saving bargain. There's others that I've used in other stories, not in Frogheart, but like the idea of like three wishes, or
Hmm.
um, I mean, there's sort of a reason that these patterns have stuck around. There's something really captivating about them, and I think there's like a moment, a little bit of delight that readers have too, seeing those elements in a modern story and seeing that there's elements of a fairy tale. I also think like fairy tale structures and elements can really just save you if you have writer's block, if you're stuck, if you kind of don't know where to start. You could, I mean, you can always do a retelling of a fairy tale. And so I was thinking a lot about frogs and animals kind of coming to the aid to sort of help humans. There's so many fairy tales where that happens. And then I've taught several workshops on writing from fairy tales, and I have a Substack post on it, but it is something that I think a lot about, like how we can use some of the structures that already exist, even if we're just retelling one of these authorless fairy tales that don't really have like one author, that were kind of passed down orally, and they have different forms, and maybe they were assembled by the Grimm's brothers or someone, but there's often all these other forms that were alive in the world of these stories. And so, you know, they're kind of fodder for us to retell and reuse in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. They're transcendent in that way. And but what else? It also brings to mind what we talked about earlier, which is you went to those workshops, you discovered this fun. I mean, I'm seeing that thread of fun all throughout your writing. Frogheart, and then one of my favorites. You have another story called Ron that appeared in Tin House, and that's just a fun premise. That's just a great premise. It's so fun that there are all of these Rons coming into her life, but underlying that like fun surface level stuff going on is this deep like destiny, like the cosmic pool of the universe, stuff going on in there that's so intriguing. And of course, like one of the Ron characters is like grounded in that world, the primary one. And so, can we talk about how you go about approaching theme with story? Because I saw the themes very clearly in both of those stories, even though there's this like supernatural stuff going on, or there's this really interesting premise floating over top of it. It's held down by these really powerful themes. So you could talk specifically about Ron if you want to, or just about finding theme in your writing in general.
And thank you for reading those stories. That's so nice of you. um, oh my gosh. So I think you're absolutely right. And actually, in some ways, you have nailed the two big things that I think does define my work, which is a sense of play and sort of weird speculative wondering, and also a sort of cosmic, deep quest for meaning, which I think as a person that is kind of how I am and what I care about, and I'm deeply philosophical in those ways. But I also I guess I think I'm just sort of done with writing stories that I'm not that don't hook a part of me that needs to be entertained. And I think the me of all through even my MFA, I was writing stories that you know, I was trying to write the good short story, the really critically perfect, great literary story. And it wasn't until it was when I actually read Karen Russell's first collection, St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves, that I felt I had permission to just be kind of go back to something that I really had earlier on, which was a more playful sense of story and just wondering and developing weird premises. And so that the way I come to theme, I have a lot of ideas, and I think the more I just jot down these random ideas, and I just say, oh, what if there was a story where this happened? Oh, like what I have so many ideas, and I just let them happen. I don't necessarily go write a story every time one comes up, but I feel like the more I've entertained those ideas, even just to jot them down, the more that part of my brain is like awake and alive. So I'm very entertained by having an interesting concept and trying to, almost like a puzzle, figure out what would this look like if approached from all angles, and what would the repercussions of this be if played out in the world. So that's sort of the initial way I get to theme. And then, I mean, I get to sort of story situation that way, but I think the theme comes from seeing the what that really means. So like in a story like Ron, where there's a woman who keeps meeting men named Ron. And like that initial idea was like weird and fun. And I was like, well, what would this mean? And I didn't really know. And I just kind of kept having Rons arrive into her life. And then it's like, the character kind of gets tired of that pattern. And the character kind of wants something more and is looking for the solution in all of this. And that's kind of how I feel a lot of times about the content. All of the weirdness and the trappings of like speculative ideation and all of that, there's meaning embedded in that. And I feel like I'm always looking for like the metaphorical way that something can like shine light on something that is human and real and tangible. And and I'm always drawing from my own life. Like I draw constantly from my own lived emotional experiences, and they're just kind of cast through a lens oftentimes but the details are often right from my life, but then they're in this kind of experiment of concept a lot of the time. So sorry, that was a very long rambly answer, but I'm always, I basically start with the playful concepts, start with like oftentimes a what if, like I'm wondering, I'm trying to figure it out, and then I see where that goes, and I look for it often comes jumping out at me what this really means. And I think like part of that is just trust that trusting that something in us knows what it's about too. So I feel like we all develop more trust the more we write, and the more we're working with stories. Like so many, like we don't necessarily need we know so much of what makes a compelling story just because we've grown up with stories. We've seen them our whole lives and read them.
Absolutely. And you're right in saying that if you had started with the theme and tried to hit the theme, it would sound didactic, or it would sound forced, and it wouldn't be fun for you to write. Part of the fun of why we write is to discover these things. That's like the fun of it.
Yes.
But what I see that you do really well, specifically in Ron, but in these other things as well, is you start off with this speculative thing or this like interesting premise, and you push it. You deliver on the promise, as you say, but you almost, in Ron specifically, you almost push it to the point of absurdity, so that it almost starts to blur before your eyes, and it's like a camera lens blurring, and then suddenly it clears up, and you're in the heart of it. You're in what it's really about. And so it kind of mirrors your process. Like that's what you're doing in your process, but you found a way to make the finished product pull that trick on the reader too, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry.
That you absolutely said it really well. Like I do pushing into absurdity to try to expose something, a really amazing piece that maybe you're familiar with, Donald Barthelme's The School. George Saunders has a great essay about it, about the idea of the essay's on endings, but that story, The School, just escalates and escalates and escalates and gets more absurd and more absurd until exactly what you said, something is revealed. The actual real truth is revealed, even though we got there through this increasing absurdity. So
right. Oh, it's wonderful. But speaking of that, this blending of like the literary and the speculative, I could see you have both of these things going on. And so you've created this style of it like in this process. So I want to talk more about like style and voice and finding that. And we spoke a little bit off camera before this about writing and how some people kind of are fast writers and some people are slow writers. And this could even be like the revision process itself. But can you talk to me about this idea of like finding your voice through the process, whether it's the drafting process or the revision process?
Yeah. Oh, it's such there's so much to say about voice, how to find it. I feel like it took me a long time to really find it. And yet I also look back at what I was doing in high school and like maybe it was there then and I just lost it in the meantime. But I think finding voice, I think it's really connected to finding what energizes you and what really excites you in writing and in both the style and the content of what you're writing about. I think there's no way to be more separated from the voice that is really you, or that flows, than by trying to write something that you don't feel strongly about. I think that's a way to not find your voice. So go toward your obsessions, your deep passions, the things that really intrigue you. Like, ask questions that it does not have to sound literary or profound or good. There's so many writers that write profound and just powerful stories. And like, if you were to hear the premise separate from that, you would not think that was at all worthy. So I think that there can be some judgment sometimes. And so that's how there was a correlation between my own excitement to the stories I want, my own excitement in writing the stories and finally writing stuff I really was interested in, and that deeply obsessed over, and feeling like voice just started coming more naturally to me. I think that I'm also a very auditory writer. I read aloud to myself when I write. I sometimes voice memo record audio clips. So there's something the flow of how things sound is very important to me. And it's maybe why I'm slow at writing novels, because I'm very often stalled by like making sure something sounds right. But if it doesn't have a certain feel or sound to it, I almost like I can't go on with the story in a way. I need to get something right about the voice and about how the language sounds in order to feel like I understand what it is even going toward. So voice is really big for me. I think flash fiction can be a great way to experiment with voice too. It's, you're dealing with fiction stories under 1,000 words. And so, you can try out different voices from different perspectives and different sounding voices and different ways that language creates voice, and not feel like you're stuck in a long manuscript.
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of important things there. Back to the idea of fun again. I think that zooming in on on are you having fun writing it tells you what you're drawn to. So even like you trying to catch the perfect sound, that's fun for you, and so that becomes a natural part of your voice. So I like that. Kind of bit of advice. If you're not having fun, or if it's not feeling fun, or if it's not energizing you, then maybe you're striking a wrong chord there. I like that. Also, I think you said something really important when you said that it's possible you'd stumbled upon your voice at an earlier age. I think how many of us as young writers hit upon it in a single paragraph or in a story, and don't know that's what that is, and maybe we're not brave enough to trust it, or because it feels not like the classic stories, the great American short story that you're trying for, you abandon it. I'm sure you did see a glimpse of it and didn't recognize it for what it was, and I wonder if we all have. It's an interesting concept.
I mean, I think, any younger person writing in childhood is probably writing from more of a state of bliss and less concern about that critical self. But I don't think that I knew what I was. Clearly, like, lived life experience informs a lot of what someone might want to write about. And I think for me, yes, I wouldn't have been able. I had to be up to my 30s to really even get into to know enough to write what I wanted to write. But I do think that there was some flow state that I was in as a child that we all probably are in, that is important. Can I just add one quick thing? I wanted to say you mentioned the fun idea. I do think it's fun that is very important when writing, and to go where that is, to follow that energy, which is why I do work. I work on a lot of projects at once, and I go kind of where I feel drawn. And sometimes I am skipping around a lot, but I also, certainly it isn't always like, sometimes you're genuinely struggling, and there's a real struggle involved. And but I do think that I'm not a writer that will push through, like, kind of pulling teeth, get into a state where I'm like I will labor over trying to solve a problem, but I often find that those problems in narrative are better solved. I have better solutions and better ideas when I don't do that. So it's not that I think that there's some writers might be different. It's not that I think that you should never work hard and really kind of muscle through a writing project. But just that for me, the answers often come when I move aside to something else, then come back to that, and it sort of solves itself a lot of the time.
Right. And you probably can stay in touch with why you love writing a little better. Some
That's true.
writers do push through the struggle, and you have to at some points, as you said. And some writers, have these waves where they kind of fall out of love with it, or they have to be reminded of why they're doing it in the first place. It seems like you have a very healthy relationship with writing, where you can stay in love with it and not push yourself to the point where you want to scream and walk away.
Yeah.
But you're right. Some people need that, and everybody's process is different for sure. I do like the idea of following your instincts with what lights you up. I think you can't go wrong with that too much. I want to talk about your. I think you were very unique in that you found this. Maybe I shouldn't say unique in my circle, and my circle is mostly novelists. You're
Uh-huh.
unique in that you found this great success with your short fiction only. Like, you've been published in these great magazines. You've gotten a literary agent from this. To be quite honest with you, I didn't know. I knew that was possible to happen, but I didn't know. I don't know how often that happens. I know a lot of writers are trying to get traditionally published and an agent through a novel manuscript,
Mhm.
and you seem to have found a different way into that. So I don't know if you can talk about the power of short fiction in, like, establishing yourself as a writer and building a platform and in working toward getting traditionally published as a novelist. I don't know if there's anything you could say about it. I know it's a big
I'm happy.
field.
Yeah, it's honestly not something I do feel like short fiction has opened doors, and I don't feel like I am where I want to be yet, because obviously I do want to have books published. But I am amazed and grateful that so much has come from short fiction, and which I fully love as a form too. So yeah, my trajectory was, as I started publishing short stories, kind of just using like a list and going down my dream journals, submitting first to the sort of ones that are that are the more competitive ones, and then kind of working down the list. I started getting acceptances, and just kind of often not at those places yet, but I just started getting, the way everyone does who submits something. You get a lot of rejections, and then you get like maybe some interest, and then maybe like one out of however many you get an acceptance. So I started building up publications, and I did have agents start to reach out, which is, I'm not actually sure. I do know of a number of other people where that happens, but I do think it's largely dependent on where you publish and what agents are reading. So the place, there were some mid-tier journals where agents did. I was like, okay, agents are reading that because they were contacting me, and it was through places like Tin House, the Eye Review, that I started getting. After those publications, I started getting more contacts. It was actually through a producer reading a story of Ron in Tin House, that led to sort of some film interest in that, and like optioning it, which is just kind of like renting the rights. And it obviously doesn't mean anything is going to happen with it. It's very slow. That whole thing is, yeah, that whole world of optioning and film and TV rights is like, I still don't understand it at all. And it's, I'm kind of learned to not really expect anything, but it's really nice that there is interest there. And that's happened with another story since then too. So there's that whole thing, that whole world, which I didn't really know was something that came sometimes to short story writers. But I have heard people say in that there is a lot of interest in Hollywood in short fiction because it's easy to read, and it's sort of a digestible way to encounter story for a lot of these executives. So yeah, there's my agent he read something of mine, piece of flash fiction actually, and was interested in working together. And of course, yeah, I don't yet have a novel ready, but I it's been great to feel like there is support there, and he's worked with me on some short fiction, and so it can basically what I think writers should know about is that there is all these things can happen through really crafting and honing short stories, and there is value in writing the best short story you can and trying to place it as high and a place with as large a readership as you can, because it will get read, and you don't and there's lots of people in the industry, in the literary world, in the film world, that do read short fiction, and so you kind of see you encounter those people. But no, and I don't know, I'm speaking from my own experience, so I have heard of this happening to others, but I also don't know, like, the type of story, if that affects it, if there's I do think there's something cinematic and visual and kind of plot-esque, plot-driven, probably helps with getting noticed in that way. But yeah, certainly literary agents are reading journals, and I've actually on panels have heard agents say before, we want to find you. We want to be the ones to see that you are out in the ecosystem in the literary world, and we want to be able to reach out to you. So I think that is, yeah, there's lots of value in sort of getting into the literary world that way.
Well, it's amazing. I'm so happy for you. It's such an inspiration to all of us that you're able to find an audience, an agent, people that want to option your stuff for TV and film. And by the way, I'm praying that Ron makes it to Netflix. That would be the greatest Netflix series. It would be so fun.
Hey, Jason, that's
Or whatever version you want.
yeah.
Okay, we made it to the fast round here. This is just a series of fun questions. You can answer with
Right.
one word. You can answer longer if you want. They're meant to be just taken how you want. The first is the classic. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Plotter.
Okay.
But
Um,
actually both. Pantser too.
yeah.
So,
A lot of people say there's a mix. What's one writing rule you don't really agree with?
show don't tell. I tell a lot, and I think writers need to learn to tell
I
because
know.
yeah.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. It should be show a lot, but don't
Yes.
stop telling. A lot of young writers
Yes.
think that, yeah.
Or know when to tell, because
Right,
not everything needs to be shown. Not everything you show when there's a reason you're showing the writer or the reader that.
right, right. This one could be taken a million different ways, so don't feel the pressure on this. You can just answer whatever's on top of your head. Who inspires you?
George Saunders, Karen Russell, Amy Bender, Kelly Link.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you could offer one piece of advice to aspiring writers, you can just pick whatever one you want, what would it be?
Oh man. Oh, I have so many.
Yeah, well, like maybe what you're
I would
feeling this
say
week, you
don't
know?
withhold. Don't know what to tell the reader what they need to know as soon as they need to know it. Don't know when to withhold.
Love that. Love that. And final question before we say goodbye. This is my personal favorite. Name a book that changed your life. And this could be when you were 5 years old. This could be you read it last night.
So as a child, I want to say The Giver, and actually that was maybe the first book that changed my life.
Mm,
For its sense that I love stories where a character is sort of pushing outside of a boundary, kind of like going beyond what their world is. Also, The Master and Margarita, uh, the wildest, weirdest, most like complex book.
I don't
The
know this
Devil
book.
comes. Oh my gosh, it's so a Russian classic. Devil comes to Moscow with his retinue of strange and fantastic demons, essentially. Is intrigued by Moscow as a city that doesn't believe in God or Satan. So, and of
Wow.
course, so lots of political stuff, political allegories going on too. So, also, I have to say, Karen Russell's first story collection, St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves, which I think is what got me back to having fun when
Mm,
writing and realizing that a story can be, you can have fun writing it. You kind of feel the fun she has in those stories. the reader feels it. And yeah, they're very fun.
Oh, that's amazing. So different books have changed your life in different ways and different times. I love that you said The Giver. I teach The Giver,
Oh,
so I have a personal
cool.
attachment to it. I get to see like the kids slowly discover the world that they're in,
Did
and
you read
all
The
of
Giver as a child yourself?
you know what, I don't. I did read The Giver as a child, but I didn't have I didn't have this eye-opening impact by it
Yeah.
as a child. I think maybe it was probably over my head when I read it. I was maybe introduced to it at the point where I didn't get it.
Oh,
As an adult, I love teaching it. I love seeing I love guiding the kids
yeah.
through it, seeing their eyes widen when all the reveals happen.
Yes.
So
Oh, that's
I feel a
great.
personal connection for sure on that one. Before we go, Joy, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything that you want to talk about? You want to plug your website, your Substack, something upcoming that you want to just mention before we go?
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, this has been so fun actually chatting with you about all of this. I'll just say I run the literary arts organization Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, and we offer writing workshops and a lot of events too. We do readings, we host writers, and we try to do most things on Zoom, so it's widely available. pioneervalleywriters.org. And I also do write a Substack that I'm trying to be a little more consistent with. But the idea is I do put a lot of time into and into each post, and it is about craft. So if you want to follow me and learn craft when a when a post comes, that my Substack's called Alone in a Room. I'm on Substack under my name, and yeah, my goal is to put a lot of, I used to teach writing a lot more and now I don't. So my goal is to actually put a lot of my lessons and the craft topics I have a lot of material on into my Substack. So make it free and available.
Awesome. Well, you heard it, everybody. Joy Baglio, incredible writer, incredible teacher. She has so much to offer, as you can tell. Please visit her stuff, check her out, read her short stories. They're incredible. And thank you so much, Joy. It was really so much fun. Thank you for taking the time to talk
Thank
today.
you, Jason. Thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I am so excited to watch others on your wonderful podcast. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks for watching The Right Thing. If you're interested in learning more about what we talked about in today's podcast, you can head over to Substack to check out my newsletter at jasonearhart.substack.com for an even deeper look into the writer's journey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you can check out all the things we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. We'll be back next time with another interview, offering more insights to take your craft to the next level. Until then, just keep writing.